This time on a very special Mike Noble digging. The Backcountry Diggers never thought they'd ever get to hunt this location, but today they get to hunt Fort Lindley. They're joined by historian Durant Ashmore and a very special guest, Roy Christie, who was the one who discovered the location of Fort Lindley back in 1976. So sit back and enjoy the first episode of this two-part special. Today, the Backcountry Diggers are going to get to hunt one of their dream locations, Fort Lindley. They made arrangements with local historian that any artifact and relics they were to find would be donated to the local museum so they could be proudly displayed. Hey guys, how y'all doing? Okay, let's go. Come on, let's go. Well, hey guys.
Howdy folks. What a crew you got.
How you doing, Durant?
How you doing?
Landon.
Hey, how you doing?
Don't see you too much. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
How you doing?
What's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
And there's Durant. How you doing? The equipment the Backcountry Diggers will be using to metal detect Fort Lindley today are 1 Garrett AT Gold, 1 Garrett Ace 400, 1 Minelab Equinox 600, and 4 Minelab Equinox 800s. The type of relics they hope to find are anything that can be dated to 1776 or older, such as buckles, buttons, or eating utensils. They also hope to find evidence that the battle took place there, such as fired musket balls. Before we actually lay coil to the soil, our historian, Durant Ashmore, is going to tell you a little bit about why this location, Fort Lindley, is so important.
But this is the site of Fort Lindley, and it's quite an interesting spot. And I want you to know this field right here was where the militia was encamped on the day of July the 15th, 1776. The fort itself was just inside the tree line there. At that time, 244 years ago, this entire area would have been totally clear cut. There wouldn't have been a single tree within 200 yards of the fort. And the reason for that is that's the range of a hunting rifle, which was one of the primary guns used in the defense of Fort Lindley. So we have two eyewitness accounts of what happened during this battle. One of the accounts is from Patriot forces, from a fellow named Matthew Brown, who wrote in his pension application in 1832 about what happened here. The other account comes from the autobiography of David Fanning, who was a Tory who lived probably 5 or 10 miles from here, and he was a 19-year-old sergeant in the Loyalist or Tory forces at the time. And David Fanning was the fightingest man that the backcountry of South Carolina ever produced. And it's unfortunate he was on the Tory side. If he had been a patriot, the war probably would have been over 2 years earlier, I would say. So this was the home site of James Lindley. James Lindley was a justice of the peace for the 96th district. He was appointed justice of the peace by the royal governor in Charleston in order to administer justice here in the 96th district. Because James Lindley had a royal commission, he was a loyalist commander. He was a loyalist captain. He was captured at the Battle of the Canebrake, taken to Charleston in chains, gave his parole, saying that he would not raise arms again against the Patriot government, and they let him go under those terms. However, in the meantime, another neighbor of his Jonathan Downs, who was the commander of the Little River Militia, which is what, or Little River Regiment, which is what this area was called at that time. Jonathan Downs took over this fort with his militiamen, and he had about 150 men stationed here. James Lindley was homeless. He couldn't come back to his area. So he went to the only place that Loyalists or Tories were welcomed, and that's Indian Territory, Cherokee Territory, which was only 6 or 7 miles from here. Fort Lindley, that's what the fort was called. It was built during the First Cherokee War, 1758, 1761. And it was used for protection against the Cherokees in the First Cherokee War. When Lindley was granted this land, there was a fort that was owned here. During the Revolutionary War times, Jonathan Downs fortified the fort and used it for Indian protection. At the time, the British were attacking Charleston in the Battle of Sullivan's Island. That was where Fort Moultrie was. There was a coordinated attack with the Cherokees along the backcountry and the British attack on Charleston at the same time. The British wanted to have a two-front war. So that's why the Indians were on the warpath at that time. So we have this account from Matthew Brown, who is stationed at Kellett Blockhouse, which is 15 miles from here. And Matthew Brown's job, which he described while he was stationed at the Kellett Blockhouse, his job was to bury dead and scalped settlers along the Indian boundary line. And he was there for about 30 days. And during that 30-day period, he buried 31 settlers who had been slaughtered by the Cherokees. There were a total of 60 that were killed all up and down the border. So there were about probably 50 settlers in this fort seeking protection. Jonathan Downs' men were here, 150 strong. Matthew Brown and his group at the Kellett Blockhouse got information from a Tory on the morning of July 15, 1776, that the Indians were going to be attacking this fort that night. The Indians had gathered at Richard Parris's plantation at the Falls of the Reedy in downtown Greenville. One account, Matthew Brown's account, says it was 300 Cherokees and 300 Tories dressed as Cherokees. David Fanning's account, who was with that Loyalist force, he says that there were 245 Cherokees and Tories who were attacking the fort. So there's obviously some discrepancy. So Matthew Brown says that when the people at Kellett's Blockhouse got the information that Fort Lindley was going to be attacked that night, they immediately repaired to this place. And they got here at dusk. And when they got here, 150 men from Jonathan Downs, the Little River Militia, were encamped in this field right here. So the rescuers from Kellett Blockhouse come upon this group. Well, this group was drunk. They were bad drunk. They were so drunk, they leveled their rifles at the rescuers, refusing to believe that the Indians were going to attack that night. Well, Jonathan Downs was convinced that there was going to be an attack that night. He stopped the rum and he brought the militia into the fort to defend Fort Lindley. Luckily, at the same time, a group under Colonel Beard, 300 strong, was traveling from the Dutch Fork area to 96, and they stopped over at Fort Lindley. They came in the evening of July 15th, and were here at the fort. So now we have 600 defenders of the fort. David Fanning says that Colonel Beard's men camped a quarter-mile away. Matthew Brown says the men were inside the fort, but whatever account is true, now we have reinforcements here at Fort Lindley, and they were prepared. And at midnight, the force of the Tories and the Cherokees came through this area, and they surrounded the fort, which is just inside the tree line there. And we're going to go to the fort now and describe the events that happened from the defenders' point of view. So this is something that would have completely surrounded Fort Lindley. This is referred to as a body, A-B-A-T-I-S, and it was one of the defensive structures that forts of the Revolutionary time had. You could not charge across this. You'd have to pick your way slowly through that. It would have been about 50 yards away from the walls of the fort. Fort Lindley was palisaded, and we're going to see the palisades here in a minute. But this is one of the defensive structures, and almost every Revolutionary War fort had a body. You can't ride a horse through that. You can only pick your way through slowly as the defenders are shooting musket balls at you. Wow. So this is a crude representation of what the defenses of Fort Lindley would have been like. It would have been palisaded all the way around. Bigger palisades than that, thicker, stouter. There would have been firing platforms or holes where you could shoot out of throughout that area. This is typical of what the defensive trench would have been like. 10 feet wide, 6 feet deep. You have to go down the trench and then up, all the while people are shooting at you. Now, I'm not saying this is one of the trenches from Fort Lindley. We're going to see the trenches from Fort Lindley. They're clearly defined. This most likely is an erosion feature, but there was a secondary trench that did come through Fort Lindley, come right up through this area. So whether this has been like this for 244 years or not, I don't know. But this is typical of what the approach to the fort would have been.
Later, Durant's going to show us some of the land features that still exist in the fort today. But for right now, let's do some hunting.
Hi Durant, so you said Tom found this?
Tom found this pewter, what could possibly be a pewter button.
Mm-hmm.
Could be almost anything.
That might be a piece of pewter.
He says it's a deteriorating metal, and that is deteriorating, and it is metal.
Yeah.
And then Gene found this square nail.
Gene found this?
Mm-hmm.
That is a very nice square nail too. That came out in very nice
Chester
condition.
thinks that that's later in the 1800s.
I tend to agree with that. But
it's definitely still. Look at the square head on it.
Yep, it has little nibs at the sides there.
It does have nibs.
I like it.
Yeah, very nice.
And we just started.
That's right, just started.
Well, Tracy found something very interesting. Durant's got it in his hand. It could be a buck and ball. We had a little discussion about that. I initially said pistol ball, but Durant may be right. That may be a buck and ball from
buckshot.
Like a buckshot.
Yeah.
But it's got that nice white on it. So we're going to say that's at least 1800s. Maybe 1700s, but I tell you what, if somebody out there can identify that for us, let us know, and we'll get the word back. But that's pretty cool, Tracy.
This is
nice.
Fantastic. Where did you find this?
It was right over there.
Show me.
Now, what's cool about that is we did have a battle here. About 600 men, so it could have been fired from that. Tracy comes over with something else. Not entirely sure what this is, but I think it's fairly modern. The head's a little off-centered. I think it's got a round shaft. So I think it's not exactly a period we're looking for, but it is interesting. Well, we got another one. We got Gene came up. And I mean another musket ball here, or not musket ball, but buckshot. A little round ball. So we're finding them. There you go. This is pretty incredible. We're hunting a location you just don't get on. Right behind me there used to stand a fort. Whether it was in the shape of a blockhouse or something more traditional we think of as a fort, I don't know. But there was a battle took place here. There are a few land features around here. I mean, we just don't get to hunt on this place, you know. But we do today. I don't know, man. It's just an amazing thing to think about. All right, guys. I am standing out here at Fort Lindley, and I think I got me a gooder. I think I got me a personal item of one of the men who stayed here. It's not a terrible big deal. I don't even know if it's what I think it is. I've never found one before, if it's what I think it is. But yeah, I found something.
You might have found a pencil.
Yeah, Bill just ruined it for me. I think I found an old lead pencil, so check it out. Check it out, guys. See? It's got a taper on both sides. It's lead. I think that's an old pencil.
Well, this pencil may not actually be a pencil. However, it might still be a writing instrument. It's come to my attention that this might possibly be something called a stylus, used anywhere from the Roman period up into the 1700s. A small piece of lead, usually a rounded shaft. The one I found had a square shaft, with a screwdriver type edge on one side and a pencil sharp edge on the other side. Exactly what this piece is. Now, they're not all the same from what I saw. They have different variations and styles, but most of them are very small like this one. Now we know that Fort Lindley was built for the First Cherokee War, 1758 to 1761. So maybe, just maybe, that the occupants of Fort Lindley, the first ones, the ones who built Fort Lindley, were still using these stylus. If they were, then they were probably some of the last people to use these stylus before people moved on to the next latest and greatest writing implements. Who knows? Next week on Mike Noble Digging, the second part of this amazing hunt. Don't miss it.
Tom comes over. He says, I have a Fort Lindley gooder.
Fort Lindley gooder, buddy.
Something that belonged to the inhabitants of Fort Lindley, he said. Oh. Yeah, you did, didn't you? That is a huge lock. You don't know what you got? I'm heading down to talk to Chet.
Get me on the board.
Yeah, I heard you found something interesting. Apparently, he found some good stuff, so I'm gonna look him up and see what he's got. But Chet just pulled that one out. That's a little modern for what we're looking for, buddy. Oh, come on, man.
Thanks.